So we had a little bit of thank you for joining us, by the way. We
Sure.
had a little bit
Absolutely.
of thank you. We had a little bit of talk about BGS. I know a lot of people in this channel have no idea what BGS. That's probably one of the main questions, probably for you too, that you do it. It's one of those main questions where people have no idea what BGS is. If you want to talk to us a little bit what the main things are, that would be great.
Maximum velocity.
Absolutely. I first have to preface it by saying I'm no master at BGS. I dabble with it quite a bit. Background simulation, that's what BGS stands for, background simulation, is the underpinning of the game that every action that a player, almost without exception, makes a difference in the background simulation of the game. So when you sell a commodity at a station, it's going to improve the influence of the faction that controls that station by some percentage, 9 times out of 10. Now, we'll talk about a slightly advanced tactic later on, but most of the time,
hydrogen bomb.
Yeah, the hydrogen bomb, exactly. When you sell something for a profit, it's going to help the faction that is currently controlling that station and help them develop their influence. Influence is how a faction exerts control in a given system. Reputation, which is the thing most of us are concerned about, is how we affect that faction or the local faction that we may be trying to win a reputation with. So that all of that is part of the background simulation. And depending on your success one way or the other, especially if you have a player minor faction, you can affect the greater background simulation of the game by exerting control in a system, or as in the case of one faction that I'm aware of, in many, many systems.
And that goes across all modes and across all platforms, is that right?
Correct.
How do you feel about that? That's been an issue with people. They complain about the BGS being able to be controlled by people in a solo mode where people in open have no control over. So they're fighting against people that have no control over. How do you feel about that?
The shadow forces effectively.
Do you think it should only be able to be done in open play?
No, I don't think that. I think there should be some advantage given to open play. That if you're playing in open play, you should have proportionally a greater effect on the BGS than you would if you were in solo or private group. Now, that will cause people no ends of headaches on the PR side. But on the technical side, it should be something fairly simple. If you're playing it open, your ability to change influence
2 times
is
influence or some point, 0.08 or something, you know.
Right. As opposed to if it's 1.0 in solo or private group, it's 1.75 in open. That would probably make people happy. Small group. Yeah, well, it'll make some people very unhappy because they're going to say, we have to work against people in open getting, that's a headache that I think most game companies want to avoid, and that's probably why it won't change. But it is, from a technical standpoint, it should be fairly easy, I would think. But I'm not a programmer, so I can't say that 100%.
One of the questions was, how does the BGS affect power play? And that's been asked by Flappy.
That is it really doesn't.
So that's a greater label, I guess, the power play, right? It's more like a
BGS is micro. It's the nitty gritty. It's the lowest level of political influence. Power play is macro. It's a very large and yet very the biggest thing with power play is the procurement of power play weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some underpinning of, the BGS does have an effect on power play. In this way, if you want your power play person to excel in power play, it will help if the minor factions that are aligned with them, so say with Felicia Winters, that the federal factions are being successful, that will help her rise in the power play rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, I'm not aware of a power play coming down. Power play or the effect of BGS goes up to power play, but I'm not aware of any, and I could be wrong. Because power play honestly is something I've not gotten into yet. But
yeah, power play, I think what most of the people think about power play is like I might do on the third week, I'm gonna get the 700 credits, 750 credits, I'm gonna get what I want, and then just let it go, and then think about the next one. So they don't really pay attention too much. I know there's people like Commander Chambers and all those, they actually, everything they do relies on power play, and they put a lot of effort. So if they're alliance, if they're empires, they will power play against everybody that is federation. They go at a greater good. But I know that most people, they do power play, they do it for what they get more than what it is.
Yeah, that's my experience too. But there are those who are fanatical followers of the blue-haired one. Some people
the space bear. That's the space bear. That's what we call it.
Zermina Torval.
Yeah.
Others are big fans of Lee Yong-ri. Others are, this, that, or the other person. But I suspect you're right that most folks who get involved in power play are, give me the pack hounds, give me the prismatic shield. The one person that I kind of look at and say, I want Imperial hammers. So Arissa Lavini Deval, much as I don't like Imperials, it's like, Imperial hammers.
It's like the trade-off that you have to do.
Yep.
And you want to tell us about you kind of explained what the hydrogen bomb is, but I'm pretty sure people want to know, because that's basically, every time I think about the hydrogen bomb, I think about you. So I don't know if you made the name for it.
I'll try and explain it. And I didn't come up with the name. I heard this from another streamer who saw it happen during the betas. Basically, what you're able to do with a fleet carrier, I've tested it extensively, and during the betas, it was much more effective than it is proving to be. Right now, BGS is erratic, buggy, you might say. So even, I who dabble in it a lot have said, you know what, folks, for right now, just earn credits however you can earn credits. Hopefully we'll be getting a patch, which hopefully this patch at 9:30 UTC will bring about what I hope will be some normalcy, some predictability to the BGS. But with fleet carriers, say you go into a station and they're selling hydrogen for 100 credits. You take that hydrogen, store it on your ship, and if you've got other commanders who are helping you, you set up a buy order for 102 credits. You don't lose too much, but you lose, right? Well, no, on the front end, you don't lose anything. You make a little bit of credits. On the back end, if you've got other commanders helping you, they lose. I think with 652 tons of cargo, you'll lose 743 credits per run. But what you basically do is, once you get, say, 3 or 6 or 10,000 units of hydrogen, however many you're targeting, I start with 3,000 because I figure that's a pretty good indicator on, if you do 3,000 and it makes a difference, then the GS tactic is going to. You take the price from 100 and you bump it up as high as you can go. which is 1,220 tons or 1,220 credits per ton. That 1,120 credit increase in price, when you go and sell it at the station, and typically what you sell it for is 1 credit per ton, that enormous loss on that asset has a negative effect on the controlling influence. So just as selling anything for a profit helps the controlling interest, anything sold at a loss hurts the controlling faction in such a way that if you do this enough, you can knock, I think somebody said in the beta, they took a ruling faction from a 55% down to a 30%.
That's the cause election, or
got them involved in a conflict. I think in the case that I've heard of, a war. For me, my testing with the hydrogen bomb, I managed to get the New Avalon Institute, which we have been fighting to lower the influence of the New Avalon Institute, so we could get into a conflict with another faction, for months now, and just constantly ran into roadblocks. We could get our influence to drop, but then the influence of the group that we're trying to raise to meet ours would tank. And right now it's especially so. But with the BGS the way it is right now, all of our BGS numbers are crazy. New Avalon staying at about 15%, but everybody else is tanking, even to a point that one faction that I've been maneuvering towards retreat, meaning it would leave the system, because once you fall below 2.5%, you're going to, if it's a foreign faction, it's going to retreat from the system it's in back to their home system. And I'm not ready for that particular faction to retreat just yet. So I worked very hard yesterday to hopefully keep them from retreating, because if they retreat, that opens up a position for. So
yeah, I know that yesterday talking with Boss Lady, she actually said something about the same thing that you were mentioning, where she likes to keep one faction still low enough, but not just not enough to get them out of the system, because they're not native of the system. Because if something happens, you can easily tell, because if somebody's trying to basically get into your place, they have to take them out first. Right. So you will know when something is happening because of that. By leaving that faction still there.
To leave. So it can be a bit frustrating at times.
And I have 2 more questions, but one is still from Flappy. Is asking if you're self-taught in BGS.
Pretty much. I did have a tutor for a while who doesn't look like they play the game anymore, from what I can tell. But they helped us when we got our first stations. They said, "Oh, you're trying to change a 10 billion system. Let's go to work." So they kind of helped me to understand some of the
dynamics.
Yeah, and they were the ones that I learned from, because I never, ever before would come with an empty cargo bay. I always came home with something that I knew I could sell at my home system. Well, since I've discovered that has a positive influence, and we've been trying to knock down the influence of the New Avalon Institute, I've come home with an empty cargo bay more often than not, because I know that it will affect the BGS. So
it kind of plays also with your own gameplay. It also affects your gameplay in a sense.
Yeah, it does. Because you're going to do things differently. Like I said, every action that a player takes affects the background simulation, and those decisions that you make along the way are going to change that background simulation. Now let me find a website here real quick. I've got it on a bookmark, but I can never find it when I want it.
In the meantime, there's another question that we're asking. How do you keep up with everything political? There are a lot of system and faction fighting. They were saying it seems really difficult to keep up with all the political. Is there a website that you can check and see like what's going on?
There's a website that helps you out tremendously. Give me just there's the one website I wanted to find. This is one website that will help you. And can I post links?
Yeah, go for it.
This will give you information on the general background simulation and what you can do and what you shouldn't do. And then this is the site that I keep an eye on things back in the home systems.
And can anybody in chat please post it on our Discord out there on help links so we don't lose this ones, because the chat when you refresh is all gone. Somebody wants to put them on the help links. That would be great.
And this site is what I use to keep track of the different systems, and you can use your Discord log on to get access to a save functionality. But just by going to that website, you can, if you want to look at what's going on in the BGS in a given system, you can look at it today and you can look at it historically for the last week or so.
That's pretty good. So you can see like the movements and the percentages and all that.
Exactly.
The question that I had, let's say you put 1,000 people together, right? All fighting for the same cause. Can you take over multiple systems in order to create a bigger faction, you think, as it is?
Not as a bigger faction, because your faction is your faction. But what we have done is we network with other commander groups, so other squadrons, effectively. And we work towards common goals. So I have helped out other factions in support of other squadrons. They have helped out our faction at squadrons. So you can affect a large group of systems. And, you know, as I've mentioned before, there are a couple of player groups I keep an eye on because they have moved in enormous ways in different systems, and it's just a good idea to keep an eye, make sure that they aren't moving in directions you don't want.
How do you approach that? You start a fight with the whole group, or you like
well, I'll fight what I call peacekeeping, where I will go into a system that I suspect they've got their eye on, and I'll fight to keep the status quo. You know, just like the UN goes into places and says, stop where you're at. That's effectively what I'm doing. Yeah,
because I was like, you can undermine them by just like maybe work towards another faction to, against them, basically, right?
Yeah, I won't work against them directly because that could cause major headaches for me.
Yeah.
Not for them, because they're so much larger. Typically, the groups that I'm going up against are so much larger than our little group. But if I go into a neutral system and just keep things status quo, that so far has kept the lid on things.
That's pretty cool. I like the whole idea of being able to single-handedly with a small group be able to change the political of the game. Do you think the BGS should?
If you work hard enough, you can make a significant difference in the game.
Do you think there's like parts of that can be improved or will be improved by the FDevs, or do you think they don't put too much thought into it?
I think they put a lot of effort into it because the BGS is how the game is governed. Now, whether they change it or not, they made some changes with the fleet carrier patch, and I think the changes they made may have had more effect than they anticipated, because significant swings in influence are happening. I mean, significant swings in the upward trend, quote unquote, mechanic that they put in there is having effects that I think outstrip their expectations. So I'm hoping they dial that back some so that players then have the ability to make a difference.
Yeah. And they were saying that what kind of difference does all the BGS change the game? I think at a bigger scale, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference if you were playing the game just jumping from system to system, right? But this is more towards like you.
Well, here's the situation that I found myself in. You can do this in any system, but this is the situation I found myself in. The system that I live in has been going from boom period to boom period for years now. And that's because of the BGS situation. We're sitting on a gold rush, and the systems around us, for the most part, are in boom. So with those two mechanics in motion, boom in my system, boom in the systems around us, and the systems around us synergistically, big word, need to find a smaller one. They work together. They work together. They mesh like gears in a clock. So 78 Ursae Majoris, my home system, is an industrial system. They need gold, silver, palladium, cobalt, indite, bertrandite, all of these things that binary systems and extraction systems produce. Well, we've got a whole bunch of refinery and extraction systems around us. So what's happening in 78 requires materials from those refinery and extraction systems. Those systems want a lot of the materials that can be produced in 78. So that movement back and forth, that synergy of they've got what we need, we've got what they need, we sell back and forth, creates a boom. Most folks in this game have made their billions for fleet carriers mining. I made 98% of my 40 plus billion that I've earned trade. And that was because of the BGS situation that we found ourselves in, which is moving from boom to boom, and then trading in that same situation. You can artificially create that type of a situation. I stumbled into this one and was very lucky in certain aspects that I was able to keep that dynamic moving. All I had to do was encourage that which was already there. You can create, you get 4 systems that have a similar meshing of needs and availability of resources, both going and coming. You can create a bubble like that and never have to worry about credits again. Even if the mining bubble goes boom, if it bursts and all the mining goes away, you'll still have a situation where you can make millions, if not billions, of credits if you can maintain a small bubble of economic boom.
That's pretty crazy. I never thought about that, to be honest. People were saying that's big dedication to be able to achieve what you guys are achieving at a small scale, at least.
Yeah, well, like I said, on the keeping economic boom going, we've been successful. Trying to take control of the system so we have some control over that boom, less successful.
Yeah, and I feel you.
We're trying to fight an 800-pound gorilla, because the Alioth Independents, the ones who open the door to the Alioth system where there's an engineer, they're kind of hard to get leverage over. So we've got a big task in front of us. I know we can do it. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah, if you were saying this, that sounds like a 24-hour job.
No, it's not. It's just keeping an eye on the BGS and doing actions that help out your goal.
Do the NPCs actually play a role in this? Like, how do you fight an NPC?
Well,
Because I mean, I know that everything
You
is fashioned
create-
together, but I mean, you're gonna have to just play around
you
with the.
create a situation where if there's a stated need,
Mm-hmm.
if you knock down that need immediately,
Mm-hmm.
NPCs can't traffic in that stuff.
Gotcha.
So once you fill a perceived need, a contracted need,
Mm-hmm.
need goes away. NPCs aren't interested in anything that isn't needed, as I understand it.
That's
So
pretty
once
good.
you fill the need,
I always thought those missions were randomly generated. You know, like whenever it's like, you know, the 10 minutes pass and you refresh your thing. I thought that was just like pure randomness of what missions you get. But the
Well,
need
I
is
think
based
there
on
is
whatever
some-
they actually need.
there is some randomness as to when the need is generated,
Mhm.
but that there is a need. No, the industrial machine that is 78 Ursae Majoris needs those different materials. So the timing may be random, but the needs are pre-programmed.
I like that. It makes it that it's not just RNG. How do they call it? You know, randomly.
Yeah,
You know,
RNG.
yeah. That
Random
makes it that
number
it's,
generation.
there's actually something there that you can control in a way, and I love it.
Yep.
And basically, every action has an equal and opposite reaction in BGS. They were asking.
Pretty close. It's not. It's not Newtonian physics, because sometimes things happen that you think, oh, this will be one little change, and it goes boom.
Yeah, nice.
So it's not quite Newtonian physics, but it is. It is. You do something, something is going to happen. Now, hopefully, it's controlled and you have some idea of what an action is going to take. But people who are much more versed in this can tell you. I think of the Terrorhawks and Sounty. They built up a faction that had a station. They did so in a very meticulous, very pre-programmed. They had a very clear set of ideals that guided them on building up that faction, and then they got into an election with that faction and took the station.
Wow.
So all their work was very, very clearly lined out and was very orderly. They built up that faction. That faction then got into a conflict with the Terrorhawks. And once they got into the election, the Terrorhawks had more than enough support to then win the election. That faction lost their station, and the Terrorhawks were more firmly in control of Sounty after than they were before.
What? How long does the election taking place in the game? Do you know?
Most conflicts, and I think all conflicts, but I'll just say most to have a little wiggle room. Most conflicts are 7 days, and whoever is the victor after 4 days, whoever gets to 4 days first wins the conflict, whether that be a war, a civil war, or an election. Those three things, whoever gets to 4 days of victory first is the winner. And I've had some conflicts that have gone 3-3, and the last day is a nail biter. But it all
Do you
kind of
check that on the website that you had, kind of thing, to see it, or
yeah?
Is there a way
Sometimes,
for people?
I'm pretty good at.
Can people see it from the game itself?
The local systems. Yes, you can go into game, and if you go to a minor faction and it's in a conflict, it'll tell you where they are.
Okay.
It'll say they've dominated for 0 days, or they've dominated for 2 days, or they've dominated for 3 days.
Okay, so
And
there's a
just
way
to
also
see the
for it to do it.
difference. Yeah, there's a way in game, and what you do is you go to the two minor factions that are in conflict and look at who's got what days. So if it's 2 to 3 or 3 to 3, you know that last day that you're in the middle of right then and there is going to be important.
Yeah. That's actually pretty good. And people were asking, what's the benefit of taking a station?
It's much easier to wield influence in a system if you've got control of a station. So we went from about 7% influence to 21% influence because we controlled two of the largest stations in 78 Ursay.
Because you can do certain
basically
more
tripled
missions.
our influence. You can do missions. Like I said, I never came back to 78 with an empty cargo hold. So I would sell lots and lots and lots of material back at 78, which boosted the faction of the station, the faction that controlled the station I was going to.
And let me guess, your fleet carrier is at a 78 station?
It is right now. It is right now. It's been flying back and forth between different systems, but as I await the results of the patch this morning, I thought, we'll leave it at 78
just
in case I need to do, if something needs to happen real quick to test out the BGS, I wanted it available there.
That's smart. We'll see with the patch notes what else comes out, but it's good. I like the BGS part more. And the last question, unless like somebody else has a question, but the question that I had is somebody wanted to start off, right? And say like, you know what, I want to give BGS a try. How would you choose a system? Is there anything, or you would just go to a random system and just start to do missions, or what's the thing that you will?
Don't do what I did and choose a 10 billion population system. Economically, it's worked out beautifully. Tactically, it was the right move. Strategically, bit of a headache. So find a small system, one that has factions that you can basically agree with. That running missions for isn't going to cause you to go, ew.
Like criminal stuff and all that stuff that you're going to get like notoriety.
I'll do the legal stuff for the criminals. I will not do illegal stuff. It's just that goes against my role play. I do not do illegal things. The one time I did illegal things, I was deliberately breaking role play because I needed to get unlocked certain engineers, and I wasn't going to if I was going to succeed in open play, I needed those engineers unlocked. But find people that fit your role play and act accordingly.
Nice. We might eventually, if some people want to try, we might start like a squadron or something and decided to give like BGS a try. I think it would be a fun thing to do. The only thing is it takes commitment. So if you want to be an explorer, you want to leave and go outside the bubble for like a month. By the time you come back, everything you worked on it's probably gone. So that's the thing about you. Once you choose what system you're gonna be, you gotta be around there, right? Everything you do has to
for a part of it.
Yeah.
Once you get things set up, if you set it up in a way that it kind of self-replicates, you don't have to sit there constantly. You could take a month and disappear. The only thing you'd have to worry about there, FDev has created certain BGS situations that pop up randomly. Outbreak, famine.
It's something that you have to be there in order to...
When they did the agronomic treatment, the blight that broke out. That's beyond our control. We can fight against it, but its emergence is against our... we don't have control of the emergence of those different elements.
Yeah. And you can always check them out because if you go to the map, you can kind of see what's going on in a way, right?
Yep.
So you can always have an idea of what's going on around your system.
Especially your home system.
Yeah, because everything that is going to be around you is probably eventually going to affect you in a sideways.
It very much can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does anybody else in chat has questions? Otherwise, we're going to let Father do his own thing because it's 2:00 in the morning. So I don't know. Can anyone tell me what's going on in Lupao? Never mind, that's not a question for you. All right, it was good, man. It's definitely
Happy
fun.
to help.
BGS is like a fun thing, and a lot of people have no idea. and I get more question about like what's BGS than people that actually know what's going on. So
yeah, and those two sites, if you want to find out what's going on Lupao, if you go to that second site that I linked earlier, it will tell you what's going on in the background simulation in that system, and you can look at the systems around it. So there are tools that will allow you to know what's going on in what system. So happy BGSing, folks, and
exactly.
Enjoy the game. That's the thing. I enjoy it because it's a mechanic of the game, and I enjoy having an effect on the greater state of the game. Maybe in micro ways, but hey, I'm affecting the greater state of the game. So
I love that. This is Father Bill. If you guys want to check him out, I'll post his link on chat. If you want to know more about BGS, that's the person to go talk to, because he has more information. And so like if you want to actually be part of his own I wouldn't say squadron or faction or whatever, you can probably join him and help out in the greater good. So it's fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Good luck with the rest of your stream, Gianna.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Father Bill. Thank you. Bye bye.